You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the Voyager episode, Elogium. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today is Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Father Tyler couldn't be with us this week, but he'll be back next time.
He's on an away team, or what they used to call a landing party.
That's right. And he's not wearing a red shirt. He's got black. Stick around to the end of the episode. We're going to have more of your excellent listener feedback. And I want to encourage you to follow The Secrets of Star Trek in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, in your favorite podcast app, or watch us on YouTube, where you should, at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia, where you should make sure to hit the bell to get notifications of new episodes. So we are discussing the second season of Voyager episode, Elogium. And Jimmy, can you give us a recap of what happens in this one?
This week, Voyager encounters a bunch of outer space sea monkeys. The ship gets drawn into them, and they have a hard time escaping. Their journey is complicated by the fact that an extra big sea monkey thinks that the ship is a sexual rival and attacks it, but they eventually get away. While all this is going on, the creatures have caused Kes to go into puberty 2 years too early, and if she's ever going to have a child, she thinks she needs to have one now. This causes both Neelix and Kes to start panicking about whether to become parents. Eventually, Neelix decides to go through with it, but Kes decides not to, hoping that she and Neelix may have a baby in the future, since the puberty induced by the sea monkeys may have been a false one. The end.
That is a very brief summary, because that's about all that happens in this episode. What'd you think of this one, Jimmy?
I'm not a fan. The sea monkey plot I've seen before several times on Star Trek, where you have the ship get trapped by an outer space life form of some kind. I mean, they did it on Next Gen. They did it in season 1 of Voyager. And this was originally meant to be a season 1 episode of Voyager, but because they had the other outer space sea monkey episode in season 1, they delayed this one to season 2. So been there, done that, got the t-shirt, not impressed. When it comes to the Kes plot, there's one good thing about it, and that's Jennifer Lien's performance. She does good, but Neelix is completely insufferable. It's like, what does she see in this guy?
Oh, he's such a jerk.
I know. I have my notes. My notes say Neelix being a jealous jerk to Kes. That's at the beginning of the episode. Then when she starts to go into puberty and they don't know what it is, they think it's a medical emergency. And my next note is Neelix being a panicky jerk. Then Neelix being after they figure out what's going on with Kes. My next note is Neelix being a jerk, making anti-parent excuses. And then when he starts to come to terms with being a parent, my next note is Neelix being a chauvinistic jerk, assuming he'll have a son. So it's just Neelix is just being a jerk throughout this. And it is ending the relationship with Kes was one of the best things they ever did for Neelix's character, because she is like a black hole that just causes Neelix to constantly be insufferable.
Right. Like that's my first note as well, is Neelix is more annoying than usual. And like this may be the worst Neelix of all in the series, because he's just a jerk. He's controlling, he's manipulative, he's condescending to her. You're so naive and sheltered. Like, you're just kind of a creep then. Like if she's like this, so young and so sheltered, she's prepubescent. We've established here.
Yeah,
that means she's a child.
What's she even doing dating him if she's prepubescent?
Right. It's so weird. It's like I mean, I know they're aliens, and it's but because it's sci-fi, we lay this over what we know, and it just feels creepy.
Yeah. Also, the details they give us about how puberty and reproduction works for the Ocampa, for Kes's species, it's all just creepy. It's
Yes.
yuck. Your father has to massage your feet until your tongue starts to swell. I'm sorry, TMI. I don't want to know this.
Well, that and the sticky hands
And the pouch on her back where the baby's supposed to be carried, and it's like yuck.
I mean, I guess I could see an alien species looking at our reproductive stuff.
Oh,
and
sure.
saying, yuck.
Yeah, but this is put on for the entertainment of humans, and I'm not entertained by this.
No. I mean, this is the entire episode revolves around the idea of, reproduction. Because we have a C plot where Chakotay is worried about fraternization, and it goes to Janeway about it, but also, is Voyager going to become a generational ship? This is a 75-year voyage here. If he makes the reasonable point. Thank you. That in about 50 years, we're going to have an entirely new crew. Nobody who's here is going to be around except for the Doctor. And so you've got that also going on in here. So I feel like that's the best part of the most interesting part of the episode is dealing with that idea as opposed to the other stuff.
Well, in terms of what you want to write an episode about, yes, that's the best. That's the strongest part of this episode. Unfortunately, they don't handle it well. They don't handle it well because Chakotay is like, he's initially, you get the vibe, he's pitching to Janeway that she should prohibit all fraternization on the ship. And it's like, that's impractical, and especially if we're going to be out here for 70 years. If we're going to be out here for 70 years, we, like on Battlestar Galactica, we better start making babies now. Right. And so what they should have done was have an episode focused on that question. And having, discussions between Janeway and Chakotay is fine. That's the right way to handle it. But they're going to have to make a decision of, are we going to plan for 70 years and hope we get back sooner, or are we going to plan to get back sooner and ignore the 70 years possibility? Because what policy you adopt is entirely dependent on your travel time.
Right.
And that would have been a much more interesting episode than this Sea Monkeys Ocampan puberty thing. Yeah. And Chakotay has some reasonable points where, fraternization can lead to jealousies and exes and, those difficulties, and that can cause a breakdown in discipline and the good, the good running of the ship. Janeway says people are lonely, in addition to the generational aspects, but people are out here. We're lonely. We're all we have. That's going to be a natural thing. So I like that. They both have reasonable viewpoints that have pros and cons. So I would have liked more of that. Apparently, the genesis of this story was the sea monkey aspect. Actually, that was the first thing that they developed. The Elogium part was a B plot that kind of took over. I mean, it became the title. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. And it's frankly the much more interesting part of the episode. How do we get away from these sea monkeys is not that interesting.
Yeah, it's all very mechanical.
We have a standard standing over consoles talking dramatically ending.
Right. And I mean, standing over consoles talking dramatically, action sequences. I mean, that's all that ever happens as for action in this is it's all on the screen. It's all in sensors. It's all CG. So it's like, it just wasn't all that interesting. I mean, I think the predictable debate, B'Elanna wanting to be, violent and seeing them as enemies because she's Klingon.
I had that in my notes. Yeah.
Yeah. Versus the idea that this is an alien species that may be just acting under instinct and whatever. That was okay. I mean, that could have been something there, but
I didn't like the fact they had B'Elanna doing this Klingon thing of assuming that the species is hostile and they need to, because that cuts against her character. She is a Klingon she's half Klingon and she wants to be human. And so even though she has a temper that comes out, she shouldn't have these stereotypical Klingon responses, like just assuming anything is hostile. And they partially redeem it when Tuvok says, I'm beginning to agree with B'Elanna.
Yeah.
But frankly, B'Elanna shouldn't, that cuts against her character type. She has a temper, but she's got a human ideology. Yeah. And she shouldn't be just assuming these things are hostile the way a regular Klingon would. She's an engineer and a scientist.
But they always do that to her. They always give her the line of, hey, shouldn't we be attacking them now? This is clearly violent when it's not clearly. Like, they keep doing this to the character. And I mean, later on, they get better about it later in the series. But, it's a little one note in the early on. We should. I wanted to point to some of my notes. We have lots of some sort ofs in the beginning. Some sort of magnetic disturbance, some type of energetic vapor. Some come on, guys.
Yeah, I've seen the supercut. Yeah, Voyager really has a problem with some sort of.
Yep.
I noticed some other problems with this sea monkey plot. Like they say that the sea monkeys are flying through space at 3,000 kilometers per second. Okay, fine. They don't show that on the screen, on the ship's view screen, when we see stuff happening, or when we cut to view the Voyager in the sea monkey cloud. Those things are not moving through space at 3,000 miles an hour. And they are 3,000 kilometers per second. Sorry. They then, when the Voyager is trying to get out of the cloud of sea monkeys, they say they twice give us how fast Voyager is moving, and it's so far from 3,000 kilometers per second. It's
100 or something.
Once it's 200, and once it's 100 kilometers per hour.
Right.
And it's like, why is there such an enormous differential here? Weren't you guys paying attention to the units you yourselves established as writers?
Right. There are other problems, like just the conception of these creatures, that they're how do they propel themselves through space? By flapping their tails? Like they make a point of saying that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, do they manipulate the subspace or something? Like, it just doesn't make any sense, and they're feeding on inorganic matter in space.
If you're using dinoflagellate mobility, your flagellate, your tail, has to be flapping against something to push you forward.
Right. So you mentioned Jennifer Leon's performance. I guess the scene or the moment when she realizes she's eating the beetles, and her expression was one of the high points. Actually, that was really, I laugh out loud at that whenever I see it, because she has this horrified expression.
This is something that is apparently one of the signs of Ocampan puberty. They start to get food cravings, which like weird ones, like human women do during pregnancy, and that's fine. So Kes eats 3 weird things, and I mean, she eats a bunch of food. Which I guess makes sense if you're getting ready to reproduce, building up the reserves for it. But she eats these space bugs that look like big beetles. She eats flowers that Neelix brings her, and she eats dirt. And this is treated as, all of this is horrifyingly weird, and it's some sign. Neelix physically picks her up and carts her down to sickbay because she's eating this stuff, and I'm going, actually, none of those things are weird, even for humans. There are cultures that eat bugs, like cultures in Africa and stuff. There are flowers that people eat, and actually eating dirt is a frequent anti-parasitic measure that sometimes children and pregnant women will eat dirt or clay in order to, they don't know this is why they're doing it, but evolutionarily it's helping them clean out parasites. And so, which we talked about, I believe, in the mind control parasite episode of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World.
Right.
So even with humans, these are not bizarre food choices. And if you're on an alien ship with multiple species, it's like, oh, you're eating bugs and flowers and dirt. Okay, what you going to have for dessert?
Right. I have heard of women who had like dirt cravings. Maybe didn't indulge them, but they had this weird desire to eat it.
Oh, they even sell like clay, powdered clay that like pregnant women can get. And I remember as a kid, I would sometimes eat dirt and clay.
Oh yeah. The mud cakes, mud pies or whatever. Yeah. Kids did that. The other thing about Elogium that's weird, it doesn't make sense, is that it only ever occurs once, because if a pair of people can only ever have one child, the species will not survive.
Yep. I know. I must have child now, and then in parentheses, foolish in my notes. Now there are species that just mate once in their life, like and right at the end, like salmon. But the thing about salmon is they make a bajillion eggs. Right. And so they make enough to replace their population. But Cass, when she's talking to the captain about the sack on her back, she says that's where my child is going to gestate.
Right.
And it's like, okay, you need to have at least a replacement population rate of 2.1 per woman. And if you're going to have one child in your entire life, your population is very quickly going to go extinct.
Yes. Yeah. That was the thing that always stuck out to me. There was something else about that age. This is the Ocampa problem, which is Ocampa only lived 6-7 years. I think is that they established
like 7 years.
The idea that you would, as Neelix or anybody, would have a child with her and we're going to have a life together of children for 5 years, and then she's dead. She's going to die. I don't think they ever give enough time and attention to the idea that Cass is going to die in 5 years.
Yeah. This is one of the things that they just completely botched on this show. They had this idea for this character that has a 7-year lifespan. Good. You can generate drama with that.
Yep.
This is going to be a 7-year show. We should see Cass at a different phase of life in every season. And she should be dealing with the problems of that phase of life. And this should have, corresponding effects on Neelix as he watches her go through those. Right. That would be how to play all this, instead of just we're ignoring the fact we're largely ignoring the fact that she has a lifespan of 7 years, and Neelix is acting as an insufferable jerk this whole time. Right. This is where they could have done good work with these two characters, and they completely blow it.
They could have imagine if we'd had Cass, around season 3 or 4, Cass has the baby, goes to Elogium for the real. And then around season 5, which is weird that, they would have a child so late and then die within a couple of years. That just doesn't make any sense. But anyway. Well,
no, they have it a little bit after the halfway point through their life.
I guess so. Yeah. And then have Cass die of old age in season 5, and then
Neelix 7.
Well, no, she dies at 7, but she's already 2.
She's not yet 2 in this.
Okay, so maybe season 5 or 6, I guess.
And we can fudge it to have her. I mean, you don't want to kill off a main character in season 6, so we can fudge it to where she'll live through the end of season 7, and then we have a tragic death right before they get back home to Earth, and it's bittersweet.
Yeah, I mean they get rid of her earlier anyway, but
I know.
Yeah, but in any case, I can imagine the drama that could create, and that would have been really interesting. And you would have this child, which, by the way, they do at the end of this episode. I want to get to that in a second. The revelation there. It's just I just don't feel. I feel like they just missed the dramatic possibilities in this character.
Yeah,
and went with Neelix as, weird comic relief instead. And yeah, that's too bad. The language they use while they're trying to deal with Kess's Elogium is so sterile. I don't know if you noticed that they just refer to fertilization, procreation. Like it's always like, there's a few times they talk about having a baby, having a child, but a lot of the discussion is just very kind of cold and scientific and not relational. I thought that was interesting because also Neelix, I thought it was very interesting. Neelix, when Kess is in sick bay at first, the woman I love is sick, and he talks about the woman he loves. Okay. Mm-hmm. As soon as we find out she's preparing to have a fertilization or, preparing to mate, the word love is never mentioned once. And in fact, at no point do Kess and Neelix tell each other they love each other. Mm-hmm. In their discussion of whether to have a child together, love is never brought up. Like there's no relational aspect to this decision.
Yeah, what I found troublesome about it is just what the heck did Neelix think he was getting into when he starts dating this woman? Because the idea of him becoming a father with her comes out of left field to him. And it's like, you're acting like you want a long-term committed relationship with Cass. And you haven't talked about children and whether it's possible and whether you even want them. It's like, dude, go take some pre-Cana classes. Right.
The point of, especially again with a woman who's only going to live for a few more years, who's going to go through all the various stages of life very soon.
Yeah, she's got a biological clock and it is ticking. I mean, you need to, this is all going to happen fast for you.
Right. Yeah, it seems so weird. And, he a lot of what his debate is very selfish. It's very self-centered. Am I ready for this? And, how will this affect me? And then.
And she calls him out on that, which is good. But then as soon as he says, okay, I've decided I want to be a father with you. I want to be a father. I want us to have a baby. And then she gets cold feet and she starts spouting liberal anti-child rhetoric. To justify her decision not to have a child at this point. Like when she's talking to the doctor as he's massaging her feet, he points out to her that the urge to mate is built into all life forms evolutionarily. And it's a powerful instinct. And she says, but isn't that why we have minds, to look beyond biological consequences? And the answer evolutionarily is no, that is not why we have minds. We have minds to facilitate biological consequences. So you got a mind that may tell you don't have a baby in the middle of a war, but you have not evolved to have a mind that tells you don't have a baby. Right. And so we have minds to make our evolutionary goals easier, speaking from an evolutionary perspective.
Right. I mean, she's right in the sense of we shouldn't be slaves to our biological urges. We should use our intellect and our morality to help us make decisions that
But if you think this is your one time in life to have a baby, which she does at this point, seize the day.
Right. Exactly. Because she has said that she's always thought she'd want to have a baby. Well, then go ahead and do it. I agree. It was unfortunate way of phrasing it. Neelix has this conversation with Tuvok in the mess hall, and I like the fact that Tuvok, it's mentioned he has a family. He has 4 children.
4 kids.
Neelix is like, yeah, wow, 4. Like, yeah. I mean. Even like back in the 90s, it wasn't that unusual, but
I like the fact that, both of us are coming from a Catholic context and 4 does not sound large. When you get up to 6, okay, now we're starting to get into large-ish territory.
Right.
But I'm just glad that those Hollywood liberals let Tuvok have 4 children, because you would think with the anti-child ethic in Hollywood that no more 2 and then maybe 3, but 4 is like wow.
Yeah, and that it's logical. It's therefore it must be logical to have 4 children for Tuvok. But as Tuvok describes it, Neelix is like, oh, it sounds like it's more trouble than it's worth, and it's like a very weird, like how Neelix, he obviously grew up in a family. I mean, he's been around people, and
he's got a sister, I believe.
Yeah, it's as if he's encountered the idea of children and family for the first time ever. Like, I can imagine Seven having this conversation, for instance, but not someone like who's had a relatively normal, at least early life, at a family. So that was kind of weird. And then
they established that Neelix is kind of he's not just being a jerk now, he's been a jerk historically. I mean, he's on, he's talking to Kes about how he sees the way Tom Paris looks at her, and he used to look at women that way too. So I guess, okay, you're saying you used to be an even bigger jerk than you are now.
Right.
So maybe he is. I mean, I can imagine Tom Paris getting freaked out at the thought of being a father.
Right. Well, in fact, doesn't this come up again?
When Tom and B'Elanna get pregnant?
Yeah. I think it's a similar, not as drawn out and not as dumb, Neelix reaction. And then there's a romantic competition between Tom and Neelix at some point for Kes, I think, soon. And then you mentioned Neelix's weird reaction, like, I guess so much I could teach a son, and I have nothing to teach a daughter. Tuvok's like, why couldn't you teach the same things to your daughter? Like, it's just a weird chauvinistic approach to being a father.
They really want to make Neelix as unlikable as possible in this episode.
They do. In any case, in the end, they kind of come to that conclusion that you mentioned, and hope for the best, hope for the future. Meanwhile, the deal with the space monkeys gets resolved as well. There is one thing about that's really weird. Like the idea is we have to make Voyager appear to be not a sexual rival to the big space monkey. And then so they turn it blue
and roll over.
And there's this whole, like, they make a big deal out of it, like inertial dampeners to full, everyone get ready. You're in space.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as upside down.
Yeah.
It was just like,
well, I mean, you could establish a relative up and down if everyone in the Sea Monkey fleet has to fly in the same orientation.
Right.
But they haven't established that. They show the Sea Monkeys going every which way.
Right. And even just the idea that for somehow Voyager rolling is like an unusual maneuver that we have to, like, get our inertial dampeners ready for. Like, no, it's just flying through space like usual. It drives me crazy when they forget, like, the basic physics of you're in space, and they make a big deal out of it. So then at the end of the episode, I alluded to, I think this is the episode we get introduced to Ensign Wildman, but maybe not.
Yeah, it is.
It's a first. Okay, she's like a science officer, and she comes to Janeway at the end and basically says, I feel like I should reveal to you. It turns out I'm pregnant. We got pregnant with my husband, who's still back on Deep Space Nine, and now I'm pregnant on the ship, and I guess you should know that. And I think, that it's an interesting aspect, an interesting dramatic development. Yep. And that will eventually lead to Naomi Wildman, who will become the child.
Right. And this is, taking this moment in isolation, I like it. It's it's good. There would be residual business like this when you're suddenly severed from your civilization and you have a crew with this kind of composition. So that's good, and it kind of forces the generationship issue, and that's all good. I like that. Problem is, it's way too late. This is the fourth episode of season 2.
Season 2, right?
And okay, now they'll eventually
leave it out there?
Yeah, exactly. They'll eventually. Now this was meant to be a season 1 episode, but then they delayed it. And so it's like, you've been pregnant for 18 months and you're not even showing yet. Now they'll eventually say it's because her husband is a Qatarian.
Yeah.
And so they'll explain it away that way. But this would have been much more impactful if they had planned properly and done this in season 1 instead of holding it back.
Have they been out there for 8? I mean, I guess they are going real time with the Voyager, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
I mean, the first season was a few episodes short, but they've been out there for if she was pregnant at Deep Space Nine, she would be showing by now.
Right. Yeah. It's been more than 3 months or 4 months. Yeah. It's been longer than that at least.
And while I do like Naomi Wildman, while Ensign Wildman leads to Naomi Wildman unfortunately leads to Flotter.
Well, and that's an interesting aspect of this is Neelix eventually becomes sort of a surrogate stepfather, godfather. He calls himself Godfather, which is an interesting term that they use. A godfather to Naomi, and becomes a father figure to a little girl. Mm-hmm. And he actually is
he's okay
not
at it.
bad at it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny how poorly they wrote him here. He gets better at being a father figure later on. Any other notes on this one, Jimmy?
No, not really. I was just meditating on, I understand Neelix's freak out when he realizes he might become a father, but the thing is every generation has managed to pull this off or we wouldn't be here.
Exactly. Yeah, and when you find out you're going to be a father, there is that natural, like, how am I going to do it? How will I be? But everybody, you just get over it. You just you move on. I mean, because you realize even terrible people have been fathers in the past. So it's not, it's not a very high bar to get over to be at least a decent dad. So that's true. All right, let's move on to our feedback that I mentioned before. And this one goes all the way back to our episode 73. In November 2019, we did an episode on the DS9 documentary, What We Left Behind. It was the 20th anniversary documentary, I think. And we recently got a YouTube comment from Lucy on YouTube who writes, I somewhat disagree with the assertion that a character like Kira, due to her actions during the occupation, freedom fighter / terrorist, would be harder to sympathize with and hold as one of the good guys in the present day. The younger generations, younger millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, have little to no memory of 9/11 and therefore are unlikely to have biased emotional reactions against the character for her background. I also think that morally gray characters and characters with dark backgrounds are popular with younger audiences. While I do agree that those that lived through September 11 would have views colored by it, for those that haven't, a character like Kira may very well be popular. I would say, in response, that actually Kira was popular. I mean, it was just the question. It was the question I think that they had of, would a terrorist freedom fighter be? I think they didn't know ahead of time whether she would be popular or whether people would react against her, because terrorism predated 9/11 and there was terrorist stuff after 9/11 too. So I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I don't remember the context of the discussion well enough to really have any thoughts. Kira was not modeled off 9/11 terrorists. She was more modeled off of like IRA terrorists.
Yes, that's a really good point. Yeah, the freedom fighters of that sort who could be morally gray. And Lucy, by the way, is right. Morally gray characters are much more popular now than they ever were. Anti-heroes and that sort of stuff. So that's for sure. All right, we have a bunch of feedback on our discussion about Section 31, the Section 31 movie. Bennett on Facebook writes, in Discovery, she was a fun character. Also, Emperor Giorgio.
Emperor Giorgio.
Yeah. Also, a little akin to a tamer Missy in Doctor Who.
Yeah, I can see that. She's less chaotic than Missy.
Yep. Although I agree with the podcast comments and not over-the-top negative comments online, it came to me that one disappointment with the movie that was that she was just less her. Not enough, I dislike you less banter. Great work, SQPN, as usual.
That could be. It's been so many years since I'd seen the Emperor Giorgio character that, I may not have noticed her being that much toned down. Because she was in season 3 of Discovery, which was the last season I watched, and that's been quite a while. So, I don't, my impressions of Empress Giorgio aren't that vivid.
Yeah, I do think, she had evolved since she first showed up and had become less, of a very aggressive, mean person.
Unlike Missy, she's not going to just pop a balloon to kill someone for fun. She'll kill you to make you her slave in the afterlife, like Zodiac. But she's not just going to pop a balloon.
Right. Then our next comment, Miguel writes, "Wow, I'm glad someone liked it. Though personally." I found all the characters to be silly and poorly written, and it was clear they tried to add some energy in post-production by adding about 36 snap zooms. That's reasonable. Both points, the characterizations and the post-production. Truly Awesome writes, great episode. Like Jimmy, I had watched the Drinkers review, the Critical Drinker YouTube channel. It had made me not want to watch it, but maybe now I will, although frantic action is a big no-no for me. I think a Section 31 series would have been best in the Enterprise era, though not yet called Section 31, and next best in the DS9 era. Oh, well. I think DS9 era, Section 31, it would have been great.
I think they're reasonable. I think both of the possibilities are reasonable points of view.
Yep.
I mean, you could do a Section 31 in almost any era you want. So to me, it's a matter of taste and see how they do it. What's the execution?
Right. Now, the next comment came on a YouTube short excerpt of our discussion. So this person was reacting not to our whole discussion, but Sean writes, the show is doing terrible in the ratings. Are you guys paid by Paramount to say this?
I'm not sure which show they're thinking of.
The Section 31.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, using the present tense though is doing terrible in the ratings. That sounds like it's an ongoing thing, and this is a one-off movie. Right. But assuming it's Section 31 they're talking about, no, we're not being paid by Paramount. We don't get paid for what we do. And if you hear us praise something, it's sincere praise. If you hear us criticize something, it's sincere criticism. I mean, we get people who, when we note things we don't like about various Star Trek things, it's like, oh, here comes it. You guys are so critical. It's like, well, we're critical when we're critical, and we're not critical when we're not critical.
Yeah. Just because something is doing poorly in the ratings doesn't mean that everybody hates it, but also just because there are things to dislike doesn't mean that there aren't things to like as well. That you can have a nuanced view of things. It's not everything's black and white. There were parts of Section 31 that I thought were dumb or poorly done. Then there's parts of it that I enjoyed and I thought were fun and interesting and made me think. And that's the way I approach almost everything we do, is to find the good, to note the bad, and to move on from there. So, use your critical thinking. So, but thank you, Sean, for your comment and giving us that chance to discuss that. And that's all of our feedback. We'd like to take a moment now to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Trek, including Connor F., Tom W., Roger F., Derek V., and Daniel Z. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. We'd love to know what you think of Elogium, the show, the episode. Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, our Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to trek@sqpn.com, or visit our Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. You can watch The Secrets of Star Trek on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing Shockwave Part 2 of Enterprise, the Enterprise's second season's premiere.
Yeah.
Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Star Trek.
Thank you, and live long and prosper.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, it appears we've lost our sex appeal.